Hello everybody and welcome to Planet Zoo and specifically to Gaia Wild. It's time to create a brand new park today and I cannot wait. It's going to be a good one. So the whole idea really behind Gaia Wild Zoo, Gaia Wild, Gaia, whatever you want to call it, is to celebrate the earth, the conservation of our nature and of course our animals. And this is something that I just really want to emphasize in this park, something we're really going to focus on. I think I've been watching a little bit too much of David Attenborough here, but alright, let's get started, shall we? So we're going to completely change the way our guests arrive into our park. So we're actually going to start off with removing everything that's there. So we're going to remove the guest spawners here. We'll revisit them at a later date when we actually build, the main entrance building and the main entrance area around it, as I want the guests sort of arriving from a realistic point. So either the bus station or the car park or whatever we're going to come up with when we build the entrance plaza. So first things first is the wonderful pathway system. Now my idea for this entrance is going to be something that I've not really seen done many times before, as far as I'm aware at least. I want to try something different. It's going to be quite sizable. It's going to be rather big, in fact. So Gaia Wild as an entity, as a park, is going to be a high-budget zoo. The sort of idea behind it is that it's one of the major zoos in the world, in our fictitious world that we've created, on par with places like San Diego Zoo, right? High budget, big budget, focusing on conservation on nature and showing off animals to all of our guests. So Gaia Wild's going to be set in Western Europe, as that's where I'm from, that's where I know it, so that's sort of the style that we're going to go for. So we're going to change it ever so slightly. Like I said, we're going to integrate every single aspect of the park, and especially this entrance, with nature as much as we can, and with the earth, and celebrate everything around that as well. So we're going to make this grid here, and we're going to stack some of these slabs on top of each other. This will help us get the pathways in the right position. Now, I wish that I was clever enough to come up with this method of doing this, but I may have kind of, sort of borrowed / maybe stolen this method. So shout out there to ZSH Plays, who is of course an awesome person at building these zoos and these kind of parks for this technique. It is a fantastic technique and it works so well with what we are trying to achieve. So ZSH Plays, we will dedicate Pathage of Gaia Wild to you, my good sir. So we're going to build this park with as much realism as possible, as I like to do with any parks, be it Planet Zoo, Planet Coaster, anything like that. Let's get all the realistic aspects of running a real zoo in there. So we're going to look at the staff buildings, of course, and the animal conservation, all that stuff, but also simple things like actually, collecting rubbish and the backstage areas. So another big aspect of a realistic park, of course, is that it is accessible, and mainly accessible to any able or non-able-bodied person. So this is a high-budget entrance. It is a large area, and it is going to go up. It's going to go on multiple different floors. But because it's big budget, I want that wow factor sort of to it. So we're going to build eventually a grand staircase of sorts right down the middle of it, which is going to tie the whole thing together. That's going to be the wow, okay, this is Gaia Wild kind of factor. And then sort of on the sides, we've got these really nice meandering accessible paths with working with the various different viewpoints. I want to make sure that every guest that arrives, regardless if you arrive on the steps or the meandering paths, whichever way, it needs to look grand. So that's going to be quite the challenge when we actually do build the entrance. So yeah, we will see. For now, we're going to try and keep it as symmetrical as possible. So we're going to have both paths go either way of the staircase in a sort of similar fashion before meeting at the top here. Now, like I said, the top is going to be elevated above the ground, about 2 stories above the ground. And then below it, the idea is that we could eventually house the staff buildings in there. And you'll see that a little bit later, a habitat shelter or 2. Now, at the top here is going to be the main entrance of the park, which is going to, of course, have a big, beautiful sign, because it has to. And right behind here is basically this idea that I've got, that I want to bring humans on the animal level. That's sort of the whole idea behind Gaia Wild, right? Like when we were talking about stuff. We want the guests to get reduced to animal size, come in and explore this sort of fascinating world of nature, animals, and conservations. So, yeah, all right. Attenborough, calm down. We get it. We get it. You've been watching Planet Earth. We know. We understand. Don't worry. So, we won't start on the entrance in this episode, though, but sort of the idea that I have in my head, like I said, is these guests are going to come in, they're going to come up, and basically they're going to go underneath a couple of these giant tree houses, which is going to just float above them, and they're going to be integrated into these really big trees around them, all surrounded by foliage and rocks and various different water features. This really natural sort of area, which is just going to set the tone straight off the bat. You are here, welcome to Gaia Wild, this is what we focus on. Now, on the other side, when you get past the treehouse and through the entrance, we're going to traverse down basically a similar pathway system to ground level again. All of this is going to be accessible, and it's all going to have all the guest facilities that we need, everything you would expect really from a big budget zoo. Now it's time to build our opening habitat. We are going to sort of follow the classic zoo trend here, and that's just to have penguins at the entrance. I love penguins. I just adore them. They are fantastic. If I could go to Antarctica, I really would. Like, they're absolutely fantastic, and I think they go really, really, really well within the pathway system that we've sort of designed here. And what you'll see here at the end, it actually works out very, very well. So the idea is that you're going to walk into Gaia Wild, right? And immediately you're just immersed in nature and wildlife. We're going to make this 360-degree viewable pen from various different angles. So the guests can stand on the top floor, right, as they come in, and then they can have a look from the top down into our penguin pen. At the same time, they can also stand on the other side and stand at the bottom looking up at the big, beautiful, grand entrance, right, with the penguins in the foreground just splashing away in their water on their islands. That's going to look really well. And then to tie it all together is underneath the main entrance, we're going to have this rock grotto, essentially, from where the guests will be able to view the penguins underwater. So you're going to get this really cool, different perspective. So no matter where you stand from, you're going to have a different look at the animals. And again, it's a little bit cheesy, but it sort of ties in with what Gaia Wild stands for. So as a first pen, that works really well. You've got these three fantastic different vantage points from which you can admire and learn about these animals. So we're going to keep the shelter itself, so where the penguins stay overnight and all that jazz, where the keepers look after them, we're going to keep that out of view of the guests. So we're going to have a little internal area so that the penguins aren't as exposed. You know, as I've been mentioning a few times now, conservation is something we really, really want to focus on in Gaia Wild Zoo. So we need to make sure that they're looked after. So they need to have their own little private space there. That's something that I really want for them, is that if they don't want to be in front of the guests, they can go there. Their shelters are there. When they're sleeping, they can go there as well. So they're going to be able to enter and exit that pen, the shelter, through a tunnel as well. That's going to go underneath the path, and then the whole shelter is going to be integrated into the main building. All right, let's start working on the building itself, actually. Just sort of the exit, really, of the main entrance there. So we're going to build a fence around the pen, of course, a completely custom fence. Now this fence is going to be made out of stone. It's going to have two big pillars on either side, which are going to tie it together, and it's going to have like a cream white stone finish with columns that descend underneath into the ground. Now, the middle of the fence is going to be made of dark Arctic wood. I think it looks so well. It works really, really well with the cream white stone finish. It just creates that nice contrast. So we're going to keep the base color as well, because it just works. It just works. We're going to add in a little brown motif there just to break things up a little bit. In the center, we're going to add some diagonal slanted wood here just for a little bit of texture, breaks it up quite nicely as well, and then eventually we're going to have various different things attached to it as well, such as the signage for our African penguins. Now we'll copy that all around, and then we'll move it into the position here at the top, which is going to be above the grotto, right? That's going to be our second floor. I'll do a couple of final touches here just to make sure that it all lines up well with the habitat edges and that it all works. So we're going to do a custom path around the whole place later when we actually build the main entrance, because I haven't decided yet on what I want to do exactly. But for now, let's work on what's down below. So I really like the idea of the wood continuing on and some artwork sunken below it to break it up a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to create these wooden archways in the same Arctic wood style. We're going to recolor some of these artworks here as well, so it all matches and it's all sort of the same. We'll continue with the stone pillars all the way down as well, and then add some lighter stone here on the sides, just for that little bit of detail and a little bit of a 3D perspective here. Alright, now let's focus on the penguin viewing grotto here, possibly my favourite place of the entire habitat. So we're going to put in some concrete slabs for the top end of the glass, which will hold it all in place. Now, we'll try and keep sort of the same motif going all the way around so that the wood is still a little bit visible. Now, I really like the idea of the grotto itself extending into the habitat a little bit, so we're going to use these concrete slabs as almost steps, really, that descend into the habitat itself, just to really sell the whole immersion there, to make it all fit together. Because even in real life, it wouldn't just end there, it would actually go out into the habitat itself. Now, on the inside of the grotto is where the magic really happens, so both sides of the grotto will have these massive posters, which are going to depict images of the African penguins, and one of the posters as well is going to have some bullet point overview points, really, of some various different facts about the animal itself. It's something you see quite often in zoos, especially zoos I've been to recently. It just looks really good. So we're going to surround these with rocks as well, just to work it all away, make it look very intentional, make it all look good. Now for the roof of the grotto, we're going to keep it quite simple. We're going to use the same rock just to sell the immersion, really. We're just going to keep it simple, like I said. We're going to just make a grid and copy and paste that, move it in position quite quickly. We'll put in some guest facilities down here, like some benches. We'll recolor to match the colours of the stonework around, and a couple of bins, of course, to help keep it all clean. For the inside, we've gone for a lighter stone floor here, just to add a little bit of contrast, because everything is relatively dark down here, so then that breaks it up a little bit. Now let's finish with some of the details of the grotto, add some of the pillars in on the outside, and to hide the concrete slightly, we'll add some of these big rocks here at the front of the grotto. Now it's time to decorate a couple of detail works here. Now these penguins are mainly seen in South Africa and Namibia, so usually for penguins I wouldn't put that much foliage in their habitats at all. It's something they don't really like. They love their stones and whatnot, something you see in zoos all the time as well. But I feel like with the African penguins, we might be able to make this work. It's the entrance, everything around the entrance is going to be big and luscious. We're going to try and see if these African penguins appreciate a few trees around as well. Hopefully we'll get away with that. We'll see how they do with their welfare, of course. Might have to tweak it here and there a little bit. We'll copy all the fences around to give it a nice uniform look from every point of view. And then I found these lamps as well, which work very well. I'm going to recolor them blue, and that's going to match the water. I just think it adds a nice, unique colour. Something completely different to it, really. We haven't really had different colours apart from, green and the light white stone. So I think the blue breaks it up quite nicely, makes it look rather unique. Now, I've decided to change down here on the fence the concrete pillars a little bit. We're going to get them slightly bigger. Just feel like they work a little bit better here on the ground. Makes the whole enclosure look a little bit less repetitive. So we're going to have the small ones at the top and the big ones at the bottom. A couple of extra details here, such as the penguin statues on the fences, and we'll put some in the grotto as well. Now, I've done some more detail work, such as the signs, of course, off camera, but for now we're going to have a look at the cinematics and see how our African penguins look. And there we go, there is the beautiful grotto with the signs on the side and the penguin statues in the middle. Let's head outside. Our lamp's looking very nice with the big signs full of information about the status, conservation and endangerment of these African penguins, which we can see splashing around in the water there. Let's head into the water ourselves, and off they go back and forth. That was episode 1 of Gaia Wild with our African penguins. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment, and I will see you next week for more Gaia Wild. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.